We just learned the greatest lesson One Piece will ever teach us. Love knows no bounds. Such a powerful message, definitely one we need to spread with the current state of the world. Taught to us by the legendary missionary of love, Yasan, in this chapter. Though you could argue we learned this from Big Mom first, seeing as she was willing to love any type of man from all the races in the One Piece world, as demonstrated by her many children. But to be fair, her former love was more of a means to an end, as she looked to unite the races of the world under her in an attempt to gain more power and influence. While Yasan's is much more traditional, just people having the freedom to love who they love, no matter what hurdles may come with it. Gotta say, wasn't expecting to get such a powerful lesson in this chapter, especially after the huge lore dump we got in the last one. Hell, I wasn't even expecting to get the big reveal of who the mysterious person we've seen traveling all through Elbaf was this soon. I thought for sure Oda would make us wait another 2 to 3 chapters. But seeing as our main character only had a brief appearance in the last chapter, and we wanted to give the big players like Loki and Shamrock some off-screen time to set up whatever their next big move is, Oda deciding to give us the Luffy's group as the main focus here makes a lot of sense. Which, speaking of, we catch up with them in this chapter, continuing their search throughout the castle for Loki's key, having absolutely no luck finding it. And we find out that apparently in between chapters, they told the guards from the last one that that's what they're after, which there is no way that was a good idea. Because I mean, obviously they're going to tell everyone else that Luffy's trying to get Loki's key. In fact, it's probably their job to report this to Ja Rule, considering no one seems to live in the castle and all of the treasure's already gone, so guarding the key is probably why they're there. And as soon as I realized that they told the guards from the last chapter what they're after, I immediately turned to Nami and said, "What are you doing? Your role here is to stop this group from doing anything stupid." Although, I guess, to be fair to her, it is very hard for her intelligence to offset their stupidness when collectively those 3 share a combined 1.5 brain cells. So eventually something very stupid was going to happen that she couldn't stop. I really wish it wasn't that. And that being said though, I guess there is some good that'll come out of them telling Ja Rule what's going on. Because once they do, we'll start to get the answers to some questions we've had since his introduction a couple chapters ago. It's all going to come down to Ja Rule's reaction to hearing Loki might get free, because so far, while everyone else has been super uptight about Loki and him killing their king, Ja Rule has been strangely calm about the whole event. Well, I guess calm's not exactly the right word to use, more like skeptical, I guess. Almost like, despite being the sole survivor of Loki's rampage, he's not sure if it happened the way everyone else says it did. And his skepticism for what really went down could be, like many have guessed, due to the sword in his head affecting his memory, old age, or even just him pretending. As of right now, we don't know, but once he learns what Luffy is planning, we should start getting hints as to which one. Because if he truly is pretending and actually was the one that killed King Harold, then he's going to want to stop them at all costs. But back to Luffy and gang, they almost immediately in the chapter find the throne room, and once you see it, you can tell this is where a majority of the battle that killed King Harold actually happened. A lot of people complained in the more recent chapters that the rest of the castle didn't look like it had enough damage to it compared to what we keep hearing went down with Loki, so it was kind of a letdown, but now we know why, because Oda was saving it for this reveal. And you know what the funny thing is? We've actually been in this room in an earlier chapter. Because, and I didn't notice it either until I went back and checked after reading this chapter, but this is in fact the same room that Shamrock and Gunko appeared in at the end of chapter 1134. Because if you go back and check, you can see part of the throne behind them in that double page spread, though it's basically the only part of the room that you'll end up recognizing between the 2 chapters. Oda definitely took the time to redesign the room because a lot of the damage we see on the walls in this chapter we did not see in 1134. I'm glad I took the time to check and make sure that this was the same room, because as soon as this group saw the circle, my head began racing with ideas about how it could have got there, mostly thinking that maybe this was left over from when King Harold was actually killed, meaning that the God Knights really did play a part in that battle. But nope, this is Shamrock's, and I guess this means they just don't disappear right away. Or maybe this is their escape plan. You know, after they do what they came to do, then they'll use the summoning circle to go back to Marijoa, which would be a hell of a lot faster than trying to steal a boat and just sailing back there from the island. It could also be how they plan to get their back up to Elbaf, meaning that they're on their way back to the castle right now, and we'll likely see Luffy and Shamrock meeting very soon. Hell, with this pacing, I wouldn't be surprised if they end up meeting by the end of the next chapter. Which I know some fans were hoping wouldn't happen at all, but we do have to come to terms with the idea that it might end up happening before the arc's over, if not very soon. Now, while we're on the topic of the magic circle, Nami does mention recognizing it from a book she read about how it's used in some countries to summon demons. Not saying it's confirmation on the 5 elders having demonic powers, but this is 2 chapters in a row where demons were directly mentioned. Just saying. Also, I found it funny that even with all the creepy talk about ghosts and demons, that Road was the only one who got freaked out, Even when they heard a mysterious voice calling out to them, the others just stayed completely calm. Which I guess is a natural result of hanging around with Brooke for so long. Once you have a talking skeleton with you on a daily basis, not much in the supernatural realm is really going to surprise you at this point. Now, that voice ends up being the mysterious person we've seen roaming around Elbaf, who Road refers to as Yasan, and Oda basically uses this chapter to confirm most of the big theories around this character. He is in fact Scopper Gaban, former member of the Roger Pirates, and we find out that yes, he is Ripley's husband. But what I've seen confusing some people is that we get confirmation that he is in fact Colin's biological dad. Which I mean, all signs were kind of pointing towards that being the case anyway, but I know a lot of people were still questioning how it would work between the two, considering the huge size difference between them. And to that I say, like many other reviewers have mentioned, Big Mom had a kid with a Tantata, one of those very small bug-like creatures that we met on Dressrosa. So yeah, if that worked, then basically anything is possible. Oh, and by the way, we find out that Colin is currently 20, which, I mean, yeah, I guess that makes sense when it comes to aging in terms of giants, and Ripley is currently in her 80s. Which makes Scopper, considering he's younger than Ripley, I'd say somewhere in his late 70s. Or at least I assume he is, considering he seems to be about the same age as Rayleigh and Garp, and they're both currently 78. Now, in the last chapter, we got to see a peek into the future, how there's going to be a big war that's either going to lead to the world being destroyed for the third time, or for the first time ever being saved from said destruction. Well, in this chapter, instead of doing it for the world as a whole, Oda decides to give us a look into the future for one specific character. Because Scopper is basically just Sanji. Like, literally everything we learned about him from the Giants in this chapter when they're talking to Usopp, it sounds exactly like our favorite cook. He was the left-hand man of Roger, said to stand on basically equal ground as Rayleigh, just like Sanji was Zoro. He was the one who would often butt heads with Roger about idiotically doing something reckless, just like Sanji often does with Luffy. We find out that he single-handedly defeated over 100 enemy pirates that tried to take Roger out while he was visiting a doctor, which, while not something we've seen Sanji do just yet, is definitely up his alley. He got together with a member of a different race, just like how Sanji is going to end up with anyone at the end is likely going to be Pudding, who is a part of the Three-Eye tribe. And do I even need to mention the fact that he's walking around calling himself the missionary of love? Seeing Scopper in this chapter is like we're looking directly at a picture of Sanji 40 plus years into the future. Except instead of freely roaming around an island of giants, he'll probably just be running a restaurant somewhere in the middle of the ocean. But now that the mystery of who this man is has been solved, the question we have to ask now is what role will he play in the story going forward? As of right now, he's going to be sparring with Luffy, probably going to show him some things he can do with Haki that neither Zoro or Luffy knew were possible. I mean, he came to the throne room after sensing some intense Haki, likely from the summoning circle that brought Shamrock to the island, so he must have been confident that he could handle whoever was waiting for him there. So I kinda doubt Luffy pulling out anything other than Gear 5 is going to give him any trouble, but besides that, what is his point here? I mean, the fact that he knew the key was in a room hidden under the throne might hint at him having some knowledge of what really happened with King Harold. So maybe his role here is to give Luffy and gang the true story of the event so they can know for sure if Loki is a bad guy. Not that it's going to matter much to Luffy, he's probably still going to want to set Loki free even if he is evil, just so he can know where Shanks went. Scopper also seemingly has a scar on his head that kind of resembles a flame, so there's a small chance he might be the man marked by flames. But other than that, I'm not exactly sure why Oda would have him show up here. Like, my first thought was that he could give some more details about the Void Sentry, but I see that going down the exact same way it did with Rayleigh. Luffy very strongly turning it down, not wanting to spoil his adventure. He does end up name dropping a brand new race called the Dosunadas, so maybe he's here to set them up for when we eventually run into them. Other than that, I have no idea what else this member of the former Pirate King's crew could offer to the story, though I am looking forward to seeing what he has in store for us. But let me know your theories on what Scopper has to offer to the story in the comments down below.